Before we start today's episode, a bit of housekeeping for all those listeners out there. Whichever your podcast listening platform of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, reviews can make a huge impact. Not only do we value your feedback, which can help us create better content, it will also help others discover the podcast. So spread the love and leave a review if you've got a minute. And with that, on with today's show. I'm the Reverend Dr. Jenny McKay, veterinarian and minister in secular employment, environmentalist, activist, and self-confessed cat junkie. But believe it or not, I have never watched a Korean monster apocalypse series on Netflix. Someone who has is my guest, Church of England priest and author of the book More TV Vicar, Bryony Taylor. Hello, Bryony. Thanks for speaking with us today.
Hi, Jenny. It's good to be with you.
Can you tell us about your foreign language viewing experiences during lockdown? And what was your most memorable watch?
Yeah. If you remember back in lockdown, it was quite hard to find things to do. And one of the things I discovered was Netflix has some amazing foreign language dramas on it. And the good thing about watching foreign language dramas is that it stops you double screening. And I'm really bad for that. So I'll be on my phone or my iPad and then watching stuff on the telly and making notes and looking and not being able to focus on anything. And I found concentrating quite hard in lockdown. And so watching stuff with subtitles was a really good way of focusing on one thing. The other thing that was great about it was it sort of gave you a chance to travel around the world when we weren't allowed to go more than 5 miles away from where we lived. I ended up writing a bit of a blog post about all the different shows that I was watching. And I think my favorite was one called The Gift, which is a Turkish drama, which I really, really enjoyed. That was kind of like, it had stuff about archaeology in it, and I love ancient history and stuff like that. And it was sort of a bit supernatural as well. And it had a kind of like crime family boss thing going on. Yeah, there was loads going on. It was really unusual. I loved that one.
Oh, that sounds really good. I might actually look for that one myself. I quite like those Nordic noir ones, but I probably need to experiment.
My husband calls them my hurdy-gurdy programs because he walks in and there's always people speaking in Danish or like Swedish or whatever. But yeah, I love any of those. I will watch as well. I am a massive telly addict, so I like everything really.
Oh, brilliant. I'm definitely The Gift. I'm definitely going to look out for that one. Sounds absolutely fab.
Yeah.
But your early career, it started in the learning sector in museum and library education. So could you tell me how you made the transition into priesthood and how religion's always been an important part of your life?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was brought up in a high Anglican church in Southend. So bells and smells and all of that as a kid. But I always had a faith really from being quite young. And it wasn't until years later that I remembered that when I was about 10, I used to imagine running my own church. And back then, there weren't any women priests. We did have a deaconess in our church. But yeah, the concept of women being able to be priests and leading churches was just not there, really. So I guess it was just a little pipe dream I had as a child. And then when women priests were first ordained, I was 16, and I actually interviewed a lady in my parish who was one of the first women to be ordained and did a project on her for school. And apparently I said to my mum when the vote went through at synod that that could be a job for me, kind of thing, although I don't remember saying it.
Wow.
So it was kind of always there a little bit. And then when I went to university, when I was graduating, I kind of felt quite a strong pull towards ministry. But I decided that I was only 23 and didn't really know anything about life. And so I made a bit of a deal with God and said, I don't think the time's quite right yet, but give me a nudge if you want me to do it in the future. So then I threw myself into kind of museum education as a career initially. And then ended up towards the end of that time working in social media. became a social media consultant. And it was around that time I started to feel a very strong pull towards ordination, and started the process of exploring it when I was about 35. So I came to
Right.
it kind of a bit later.
Yeah.
But I was really grateful for everything that went before, really. And I think I was right to not go straight to theological college at 23 when I didn't really have any experience of the world. So it's one of the phrases I really like is a Baptist minister that I used to know used to say, "Nothing is wasted in God's economy." And
No.
all the things that we experience and go through before can be used by God. And that's exactly what happened to me in the pandemic. Suddenly, we had to do church online, and my previous
Yes.
skills came to the fore, and I never expected that to happen. And it was one of those sort of, wow, yeah, God
Yeah.
prepared me for this years ago.
Yes.
Such a time as this kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, he did. He did,
Yeah.
absolutely. And same for me, because the social media that I do as a Reverend Vet, it wasn't there before lockdown. And yeah,
Mhm.
I just like you had to put church online, and it's just a wonderful medium now that we can use to reach out to so many different people.
Mm, absolutely.
And you've also helped your fellow priests as well, haven't you? You've posted some online tutorials to help us all understand the digital world a little bit more clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the amazing things, really, because I used to work in social media. I used to teach people how to create Facebook pages back when nobody really knew what Facebook was, how to use Twitter and all that sort of thing. And also in 2011, I got together with a group of friends, online friends, and we put on an online 9 lessons and carols service in 2011. Back when the concept of online church was really alien to people.
Mhm.
And it was amazing, actually. And we put this online service on, and about 500 people attended it online on Christmas Eve. And that was back in 2011. And so when it got to
Wow.
2020 and the lockdown, I suddenly thought, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. And so I decided it would be a good idea to kind of use my former skills to kind of help my
Mhm.
fellow priests, and particularly given that I, like many of us, it was just me and a laptop, and that was it, and that was the only kit I had, really. Um, and I did do some workshops for Premier Media on getting online and things. And sometimes I was alongside people from, because Premier is a massive evangelical kind of
Mm.
organization, and so the other people were like pastors of these mega churches and
Okay.
stuff, and they were talking about, oh, yeah, get your audio visual team to create your videos and do this and do that, and I
Oh.
was like, what? Like, I'm
Uh,
just a vicar on my own with a laptop, like, trying to help my elderly congregation get to grips with like WhatsApp. It was sort of so I just wanted to kind of share with people some simple ways that they could use tech to kind of reach their communities, and because I had the skills from my life before, and also actually I was learning as I was going along as well, and sharing my learning with everyone else. And I think that's often what you need, is just someone to kind of show you how to do stuff. And actually, quite often when I do that, I go, "Oh no, that button doesn't do what I thought it was going to do," and then people relax because they realise that I'm not an expert. I'm just learning like everybody else.
And I think you don't need so much high tech these days, do you? Because even when you watch, the journalists on TV, sometimes it can just be very simple. It's just with an iPhone, isn't it? And I think people understand that.
Yeah, I think things have got much easier, and that's one of the things that was great in the lockdown. I mean, people say that the church actually probably moved sort of ahead 6 years further into the future than they would have been if it had not been for the lockdown, in terms of using technology. And certainly,
Yeah.
I was able to teach some of my quite elderly congregation that had smartphones and had WhatsApp on their phones.
Yes.
To I taught them how to do a voice recording on WhatsApp, and then they sent me the readings for the service each week, and then I was able to play them in the service. Or they sometimes sent me into sessions as well. And these were ladies in their 80s, and they learned how to do it, and it was just incredible. So yeah, I think the
Great.
newer tech's actually much more simple.
Yeah.
really.
And are you still using social media in your church at the moment?
Yeah, we're still live streaming our services because there's a really big online congregation actually of people, and it's something that kind of we should have been doing anyway. I think it's a shame those churches that did it in lockdown and then stopped because actually you're missing a trick really because you don't know who you're reaching. And also it gave people the opportunity to have a bit of a nosy to see what actually happens behind the door of the
Yes.
church without
Yes.
feeling kind of awkward and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. It's kind of a
so
non-confrontational way, isn't it, that you can
absolutely,
learn?
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah, we're still using it. I mean, I'm totally because I've been in ministry 10 years now, I'm really rusty on my social media. I mean, I'm probably more savvy than the average person on the street, but like I'm sort of very out. It moves so fast, and like 10 years is a heck of a long time in social media. So I'm sort of trying to learn how to use TikTok a bit and stuff, and I
Yes.
feel like I ought to be using Instagram more for church, but I haven't quite got there yet.
Yes.
But
And then there's all the artificial intelligence that's coming along
yeah,
as
the AI
well.
stuff's fascinating. It's quite scary as well, but I have used some of it to make some. I made a poster at Christmas using AI, and that was quite fun.
Mm.
Like I got a picture of we did a Dickensian carol service, and I managed to get an AI thing to create a poster with like basically
Wow.
some Victorians singing in front of a church. You could just type in what you want the picture of, and then
And
it
it
comes up.
creates it.
It's really fun to play with. Have you seen that really fun picture of Jesus flipping over a table?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
Oh, I
somebody
must have a
somebody
look.
put into AI Jesus flipping over a table, and
Okay.
basically Jesus is doing a backflip over a table.
Right. Right. He was
Absolutely
flipping
brilliant.
over the table.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I know. Church and the way we use technology is definitely going to change significantly over the next few years. It will be very, very exciting to see.
Definitely, yeah.
But we also use other forms of media, of course, books. And that brings me on to your really fantastic book, More TV Vicar. And for those who are listening, this looks at the portrayal of Christians on British television from the 1980s onwards. So definitely want to recommend that to our listeners. But without giving too much away about the book, was there anything that surprised or shocked you from those older shows you discovered or revisited during your research?
I'm not sure anything particularly surprised me, but I guess there's definitely the earlier versions of portrayals of particularly vicars on the telly were very one-dimensional in the early days, and were quite often very negative as well. And so you had these really quite dire, sort of wet vicar characters, particularly male characters, and they were the ones that Rowan Atkinson famously kind of
Yes.
lampooned lots of different times. I mean, famously in Four Weddings and a Funeral, but the Rowan Atkinson's done a whole range of vicar characters over the years, and they're all kind of based on that sort of slightly wet character that came from those early programs.
Yeah.
And then what happened was they started to become more humanized, and particularly with the coming of the Vicar of Dibley. And of course, that gave a
Yes.
whole new dimension to it. And that changed things quite significantly. I mean, I've sort of argued in the past that I think the Vicar of Dibley was actually like a Trojan horse in terms of the way it changed Middle England's perception of female priests. And if it
Yeah.
hadn't, and I genuinely think if it hadn't been for the Vicar of Dibley, I think it would have been an awful lot harder to have acceptance for women in the church. I think it really broke down those barriers, and it did so in such a kind of nice packaging. It was a really nice
Yes.
Sunday evening, cozy
Yes.
family program to watch, and it just very cleverly shifted people's perceptions into thinking, yes, it's fine to have a
Mhm.
woman priest. Um, and then the more recent ones have been much, much grittier, and showing priests with a sort of dark side as well, and being a bit more deep. So yeah, that's the kind of shift and move that's happened over the years. But I'm a big fan of Vicar Dibley. I think it, and I did discover in my research that actually Richard Curtis deliberately set out to do that,
Ah,
to
right.
make people accept women priests. And he actually was there at the General Synod debates. He attended in the public
Ah,
gallery, And there's a scene right at the beginning of the series with David Horton, who's the one that doesn't like her when she first arrives. He's like the church warden.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, oh, it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, not Sharon, Debbie, Tracy, and Sarah. And Richard Curtis says he actually heard that argument being made at the General Synod debates, that because the apostles were male, then there shouldn't be female priests. But then he turned it into a joke and made everyone laugh at that perspective. And so, yeah, that was really interesting to find out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was a real turning point.
Yeah. No, I really don't think we would be where we are now with women bishops if it hadn't been for the way that Vicar of Dibley show really just and I mean I still get, I mean, I don't have you been called the Vicar of Dibley in your time as a minister?
A couple of people. It doesn't happen so often now, but maybe earlier on this was something.
Yeah, I've been called the Vicar of Dibley so many times because it's just people's perception of, and some people don't like it. But I'm like, well, she's quite a fun character. It could be a lot worse. Like the male vicar characters are terrible. So at least we've got one that's actually quite lovable, really.
Yeah, and she's she's like a normal human being as well, which is very important.
Yeah, she is, and she's fun, and you want to be around her, I think that's quite good, really.
So, of course, we also had that priest that appeared on Fleabag, which has been a very popular series as well. And I know you discussed that on BBC Breakfast News. So, I mean, how do you feel representation of Christians has evolved since the time of your book's release?
What's really interesting is actually just when I was being interviewed when the book was coming out, I said that I thought we would see more and more portrayals of vicars on the TV, and my prediction came true. I could have written another whole book really on the more recent portrayals. Maybe I should do a sequel.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Because we have seen a lot more, and I think it's partly because it's kind of quite a fascinating world for people, and it's a world that people don't know very well, actually. And priests spend time with people in so many different contexts, and it's kind of quite fascinating. I remember some years back watching a drama called Silks. I don't know if you ever saw it, which was about barristers in London, and it's a world that I know nothing about. I still don't quite understand how it all works, but I loved watching it and loved watching them dress up in their funny little wigs and things and all the intrigue and all that stuff. And it was just an insight into a whole world that I didn't really know very much about. And I think priest characters can kind of offer that. And also they kind of fit very well into kind of like crime dramas and things. Because of the way that we interact with people on different levels. And so we've seen a lot more portrayals, and there've been some really good ones where you think that the priest is the baddie and then they're not, or there was that fun one, Midwinter of the Spirit, which was a kind of a ghost based one, like exorcism type one, and that was quite interesting, and with a single parent vicar, female vicar. And there's been quite a few, and then Nicola Walker played a lesbian vicar in a drama.
Yes, she did.
So there's been quite a few, and I think we just provide the concept of a sort of priest character just provides a lot of fodder for a writer, and you can put the priest into lots of different contexts in different ways.
And there was a very good one. It was based in Liverpool. I can't remember. Was it Sean Broken? Yes, yeah. He had quite difficult situations, didn't he, to deal with?
Yeah. And that one was so good that me and some friends clubbed together and we wrote a Bible study course based on Broken. And it was quite funny because we were hoping to get it published, but unfortunately, just as we finished it, Paula Gooder published a free Bible study course on Broken.
Oh,
so she got dumped by Paula Gooder. But we still we published it through the Religious Resources Centre, which is based up in the Northeast, and so it's available as a PDF, and so it could be used as like a Lent course or whatever. But yeah, we did that because me and my colleagues were ministering in similar sorts of places as the character in Broken, and we were like, where are the Bible study courses for people in our communities that
Yes.
have these really difficult situations to deal with? And so that's why we put the course together, because we thought it would be really good to
That is a
using
very, very good
TV as a
idea.
springboard to discuss
Yeah, yeah.
difficult. And the good thing about using TV is that you can talk about the characters rather than talk about, real people. You can use the characters' stories to kind of explore tough topics. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. So next time there's a new Vicar series out, you need to get in there fast with your your next book for a study course.
Paula Gooder will say, Paula, you're not allowed to write a book on this one. We're doing it.
So from your own experiences, which television series do you think has best or more accurately portrayed the life of a priest?
I think Broken, actually. The one we've just been talking about with Sean Bean. Although it's, he plays a Roman Catholic priest, but it's definitely the most authentic portrayal I've seen. And also what's brilliant about that is actually you see him saying mass, you actually see him doing the work. Like, you very rarely see that depicted actually. And one of the things that drives me crazy is that things like Midsummer Murders and things like that, where you see a vicar and they're always tidying the hymn books in churches. It's like, which of us has time to tidy hymn books? Like we're very rarely actually in our church buildings, but according to kind of TV land, we just live in the church building and wait for somebody to come in. But yeah, I thought the Sean Bean character was just amazing, and just the way that they portrayed the priesthood. And I would really encourage anyone that was thinking about exploring ordination to watch Broken, because it gives you a really realistic idea of the kinds of things that you have to deal with. And if you watched it and thought, oh, I'm not sure, then maybe it's not for you. But it's pretty gritty. I mean, I guess the other one that's quite accurate is Rev, which it's quite old now. But again, that one was pretty realistic and sometimes a little bit too close to the bone, I think, sometimes. But that came out as I was exploring ordination, and it did.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I always think they should do another series of Broken. I always thought there was going to be a second series.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jimmy McGovern's done some other good things. I actually managed to meet him, actually. And because he found out, because I'd written on my blog about us writing the course, and he commented on my blog, and I was like totally starstruck.
Oh, brilliant.
He's such a hero. And he went on to do, there's a couple of prison dramas that he's done with Sean Bean.
And they've had chaplains in them, haven't they?
Yeah, and the chaplains actually, not based on, but he interviewed my friend who's prison chaplain, because he got in touch with me and said, do you know any prison chaplains? And I said, actually, I do. Wow. And he met up with her and interviewed her and made sure that the characters that he was putting in his dramas, were accurately portrayed. So he's done other things, actually, Jimmy. He's an interesting character, Jimmy McGovern, because he wouldn't call himself a believer now, but he kind of values the kind of place of the church in society, I think, and he can kind of see, fascinating stuff. But you're right. I mean, it would be good to see another series of Broken.
Absolutely. I shall look forward to that.
Yeah.
So moving on beyond TV, I know you spent a gap year in Estonia. That was in 1999, 2000. Yeah. And then you returned, didn't you, again in 2016. So what made you decide to go to Estonia?
Yeah, it was when I was in my final year at university, and I was quite involved in the Christian Union at the time. And we were at this prayer meeting thing, and we were talking about the needs across Europe for the people to go and help the Christian unions in different countries. And for some reason, somebody got up to talk about Estonia and said, oh, we need someone to go and work there. And there was this big prayer meeting, and they said, at the end of the prayer meeting, if you feel God's calling you to this, then please come forwards and we'll pray with you. And I definitely felt a twinge when they mentioned Estonia, but I deliberately didn't go
Wow.
forwards because I was like, I don't want to do this. And then after a few months, it just wouldn't go away, and so I ended up applying and going. So yeah, so I basically went to work with the Christian Union in Estonia for a year and a bit, and learnt the language. It's a very weird language. It's not Indo-European. So it's related only to Hungarian and Finnish.
Okay.
So
Yes.
it basically sounds like Elvish because Tolkien actually based Elvish on Finnish. So yeah, if you hear Finnish or Estonian spoken, it sounds like Elvish. It also sounds a little bit like Japanese actually as well.
Right.
Yeah,
So does that mean does you can understand Hungarian a little bit?
No, I can understand a tiny bit of Finnish because Finnish and Estonian are really quite similar. Hungarian's actually very different because it's in the same language group, but I mean we're in the same language group as French, and so like you can't, understand, but there might be one or two words. But Finnish and Estonian are very similar. So similar, in fact, that the word for it's quite comical because to Finnish people, Estonian sounds like baby Finnish. And the word for mother-in-law in Estonian means bitch in Finnish.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Must be very colourful then.
There's funny quirks like that where you can see how the languages evolved differently in the different countries. But so yeah, it's an amazing little place. It's a Lutheran country. So interestingly, the Baltic states are a little bit like Germany. So you've got the Baltic states, so you've got Estonia and then Latvia and then Lithuania at the bottom, the three countries. And Estonia is fully Lutheran and Protestant, and then Latvia is kind of like Germany. It's like half and half. So the top half is Lutheran and the bottom half is Catholic. And then Lithuania is like super Catholic. And it's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah.
And what is the Estonian word for priest? If you can remember.
What, you put me on the spot
Oh,
there.
have I?
No, I can't
Might
remember.
have to go back and check that afterwards.
Yeah, I genuinely can't remember. I mean, it's
That's got me
25 years
thinking.
since I was speaking Estonian. So that's one of the things that happens is you do lose vocabulary when you move away. But do you know, I can't remember. I'm going to have to Google it now.
You're going to have to go back now, aren't you?
That's super embarrassing. Yeah.
Do you think you will go back there for another visit?
I would love to. I mean, I went back in 2016 and it was amazing to see because it had really transformed into a kind of modern European city. It was still when I was there, they'd only had independence for 9 years and they were recovering from the Soviet era. And so it was very kind of that stereotype of Eastern European kind of very quite miserable kind of lots of concrete kind of thing. Although Tallinn itself, where I was living, the capital, is beautiful. It's like a little Bavarian German town, really, with a beautiful like town square and a completely intact city wall, which is like sort of Rapunzel towers and everything. But yeah, when I went back, it was like, oh my life, it felt like being in it's got much more of a Scandinavian feel than a Russian feel, Estonia. It much more aligns itself with Scandinavia because the Swedish Empire used to control Estonia. They've been basically ruled by other people for all of their history, really. But a lot of the Danes initially were there, the Vikings basically, and then later on the Swedes and then the Russians. But they kind of align themselves much more as a Scandinavian country, like they have saunas and they're much more culturally like the Finns, really. And they've very much rejected the kind of Russian part of their history. And now the Kaja Kallas, who's the president of Estonia, she's a real hawk when it comes to Russia, and she has been for a long time in terms of she's very pro-Ukraine, and because they're terrified that Russia's going to come and take them again like they did before.
Yes, that's right. That's right. The war is very, very close to them, isn't it?
Oh, I've just found out it's Prästa, I think.
Oh, say that again.
Prästa.
Prästa.
Prästa, yeah. Yeah.
Great. We know now the Estonian for priest.
Or a minister is Jumala Sulane.
Oh, that's more difficult.
Jumala means God. So I think it means like a God minister or something.
I
You're one of.
remember I went to Finland quite a while ago on
Uh-huh.
holiday, but the language, yes, it was just incomprehensible
Yeah,
because I
totally
did some
incomprehensible.
German at school. So,
Yeah,
like the food labels, you would see it in Norwegian, Swedish, could kind of see a link, and then Finnish was just,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
couldn't
It's
understand it.
completely. Yeah, yeah. There's very few apart from like English words that get inserted into the language. Yeah, it's totally incomprehensible.
Very
It's a beautiful
different.
language, though.
I know. I always think you've got to be very, very clever to speak one of these languages.
Yeah, well, it's funny because there's 15 cases in Estonian,
Oh,
and in ancient Greek there are 6 cases. So when I was at theological
wow.
college studying ancient Greek, or New Testament Greek anyway, I thought, oh, well, I've learned 15 cases, so I think I could do 6. It felt quite easy in comparison to
Yeah,
stuff.
amazing, amazing. So what's next for you, Bryony? Is it something on social media? Is it writing or
Yeah,
travel?
I'm kind of you've sort of inspired me to think a little bit about what I want to do next.
Mm,
Actually, one thing I have been doing is I wrote a confirmation course for adults, which I've had on my blog for a few years now, which has become quite popular, and I've just been asked to develop that for the Diocese of Ely. Um, for their
lovely.
online learning platform. And I really enjoyed doing that. So I think I'd like to do a little bit more of that kind of thing, providing some resources, because I just find that particularly, finding good resources for ministry and for working with people in our communities
Mhm.
is really hard because so much is focused on white middle class kind of educated sort of backgrounds. And it's fine if you're kind of a bookish person that went to university and stuff. But if you don't fit that mold, there's not a lot out there. And that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm quite passionate about finding ways of kind of engaging with people. And so I like to use things like video clips and TV
Yes.
clips and things to say, let's watch this clip and let's talk about what's going on with those characters and how does that connect with what God might be saying to us. So yeah, I think I'd like to do a bit more of that kind of thing.
I think that would be fantastic. And as you say, people they come to the church at these big events of baptisms or weddings, funerals, confirmation, and having a way to speak to them in normal language, I suppose, is just so important, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, brilliant. Well, if you develop some more of those resources, I will definitely be online and looking to borrow them as well, Brian.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to talk to you. We could talk for ages more, but I'm definitely going to look for this program, The Gift. I think that would take my mind off all the things that are going on around me. And we look forward to seeing what you do next.
No,
So
thanks for having me.
thank you again.
Thanks very much.